that the problem is?
Well, we have this, but not the timer, so I might have to time through my phone.
So Randy Moore can't get on?
He can't make it. He has another meeting at 10:30, so we will have to reschedule for the 20th.
That'll make even more time for me to write awesome questions.
I got the email. Okay, sometime.
All right, well, that's how we drag the ball down the road.
Right.
Well, you can do whenever you want that, yeah. But make it clear that that's not to talk about any agenda items.
Oh, sure.
And then,
And I can just move.
you can do whatever you want.
Loss.
Okay.
You lost me. And I apologize, I'm going to set up about 5 minutes just to handle emergency items, so I told Richard and hopefully nothing. I'll try to step out during non-important items. I mean, everything's important. I'll try to step out during
I'd like to get started.
item.
Okay.
Go, you can start with me.
Okay. Everything's on?
Just 1 minute, it's still needed.
Okay, let me know when it's ready, I'm all set.
Okay, I'm just making sure we have this set up as well as the file.
Okay.
You have a response?
No, you have public comments first.
I'm moving it.
Is based there in Phoenix. I love the idea. Turn that off, and then I have this here. Speak. Yeah.
Is it possible to upgrade our Zoom message?
It is $600, another $600, we can go up to 1,000 people, so I told Susie to.
Can she like do it right now or not?
I don't think so.
I was going to say, we have the Zoom option, so I think just asking folks that are not going to comment to watch it on Zoom is a good way to handle
I
it.
mean, YouTube.
I'm sorry, YouTube, thank you.
Okay, and then you can also call in and make a comment on that telephone number.
No, the telephone number will link to the Zoom.
Okay.
So they'll have to use, but again, if once they're done commenting, if they move to YouTube, we should have that.
All right, Emma.
Just 1 more second, I'm trying to get the laptop on so that I can time things.
All good, take your time.
These ants.
I know, why is that over here? There's nothing fun over here.
No.
You want me to?
Because that's where I put the chocolate
That's so
syrup.
sweet. I've been told that before.
Yeah, no call.
Are we back at closed session now?
Just people complaining, I think.
That's what chat's for.
About 38 minutes selling.
Let me ask about see what's going on with that.
Yeah, I saw that.
You can remember as soon as I find them.
Susan's back on.
Okay, we're just gonna have to time through my phone. I'll do my best, I'm sorry.
Same time through the phone?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
So it will just be, let me get it set up.
We're gonna push back the public comment, so that's not too.
Okay, then you're unmuted.
All right, and we're live on Zoom. Thanks for bearing with us. We've had some technical issues with abundance of Zoom people chiming in. We've exceeded the 100-person limit, so unfortunately, we won't be able to expand the Zoom quantity of people until we make some upgrades to our Zoom software, which we cannot do today. So for those on Zoom wishing to make public comment, after your public comments are made, we ask that you drop the Zoom so other people could join and make a comment. And I know I had said public comment would be done when we came back to the meeting, but due to the high number of public comments that we're assuming we're going to receive, we'd like to proceed with the presentations, the 2 presentations we have, and then open up public comment for after that. And Those public comments will be for items that are not appearing on the agenda. So having said that, we go into presentations. Board of Supervisors, Clerk of the Board, item 2.2, receive a presentation from Trinity Public Utilities District General Paul Hauser regarding the right-of-way protection project. No fiscal impact.
And Mr. Chair, could you remind everyone that they can view this on YouTube or on the YouTube channel?
Yes, as Supervisor Groves just stated, you can view this on YouTube. Mr. Hauser.
Yeah, Paul Hauser, General Manager of Trinity PUD. I really appreciate the opportunity to give you this presentation. I think Emma's going to get it up here. The idea of the presentation is to give the board background on this project. It's extremely important for Trinity PUD. While they're getting that up, I might spoil a little bit of it, but to give a little backdrop, we have a very significant need to widen our right-of-ways, our existing right-of-ways, and there'll be a video in this presentation you're going to see that really shows it clearly. They're currently 20-foot right-of-ways, 10 feet from center line. And for those of you that don't spend a lot of time in the forest, it's a woefully inadequate right-of-way given 150-foot tall Doug fir pine trees. And I just kind of want to go through the background. The idea, please interrupt at any time, because the idea is to give you the information you want, not what I guess you might want to know about the project. So if at any point during the presentation, yeah, here it comes up. So if you can get the slide view. So the acronym is WRAP, Wildfire Risk Reduction, Reliability, and Asset Protection Project. The lead agency on the project is the Western Area Power Administration. They're the NEPA lead, we are the CEQA lead. The majority of the project is on federal ground, but we are also doing CEQA on private ground. So if you can go to the next slide, Emma. And just play the video here. I'll talk through it a little bit. This video, I think if you hit next, yeah, it'll start playing. So this is in the Helena area, and there's nothing unusual about this right away. This video was shot the end of February, so it's only a little over a month old, but it gives you a perspective. So this is a drone video, and the drone is kind of dropped down over the top of the conductors, but I call this the tree tunnel. And this right away is actually pretty typical for us, where there's large stands of trees. I mean, there's areas where it looks a lot better, but for much of Trinity County, this is pretty typical right away. And what I'd like to convey with the video is how inadequate the right-of-way is. So what the WRAP project proposes to do is get permission to widen the right-of-way to up to 130 feet. There may be areas where we don't need that much right-of-way. This is certainly one of those areas where we do. That's one of our trucks on the road. That's the truck that had the drone operator in it. But you can skip this now. It gives you the impression. Yeah, this is the map of the project area, and I know it's small scale. It has to be because our service territory is 2,200 square miles. But we're spending $3 million on the NEPA, on the environmental permitting, the NEPA and CEQA effort. If you'd skip one more to the next slide. This is the purpose of the project, and I won't say these are exactly in order of priority, but number one is to reduce the risk of wildfire by proactively expanding the right-of-way and changing our vegetation management strategies. To get into the need for that, it's not known everywhere, even in Trinity County, but we no longer have wildfire liability insurance. I think all of you will remember the Helena fire that occurred in August of 2017. As a result of that fire, we ultimately faced roughly $138 million in claims. The fire burned, if I'm remembering, about 27,000 acres, about 58 structures, no loss of life. I might add that we still firmly believe and continue to contend that our power lines did not start the fire. But because of California's strict liability standard, Utilities can be held liable for fires even when they do everything they're supposed to do if their power lines are in any way involved. The kind of an extreme analogy I give that I usually get responsive disbelief, but if a driver's driving down 299 and they're legally drunk, let's say they're way over the legal limit, they pass out behind the wheel, they swerve off the road, they hit one of our power poles, knock it on the ground, it starts a fire that does $100 million damage, the PUD could be on the hook for the entire $100 million. That's how extreme California's strict liability standard is. It's the only state in the union that has this standard. Every other state has what's called a negligence standard. So let me give you a likely scenario. In the event that right away, that line you just saw, if a tree, a healthy green tree from well outside the right of way falls onto the power line and starts a fire, we could be liable. You know, the PUD's not spending $3 million on environmental work because we want to do it. It's because there's really no other option. The risk of wildfire liability under the strict liability standard is so great that you really have to take extreme measures to reduce that risk. Otherwise, you know, we're looking at bankruptcy, you know, the PUD cease to exist, or even if that not be the case, have dramatically higher rates as a result of those wildfire costs. And you know, go down the list there's a lot of benefits. You know, having a 130-foot or up to 130-foot easement can provide some safety benefits to Trinity County and citizens, even from lightning-induced fires. Another example I'd use is the August complex fire. I don't know if all of you have been to Forest Glen, but some of it looks really bad. We lost some infrastructure in that. Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of infrastructure, so we put it back up and we've applied for FEMA reimbursement on that. I think there's a real good chance we're going to get it. Had that fire occurred in the North County, where we have a lot of infrastructure, we would have been bankrupt anyway, even though our lines weren't involved in the fire whatsoever, because we simply wouldn't have had enough money to rebuild the lines and waited the 2 years for reimbursement. So a 130-foot corridor also protects our infrastructure from fires that may start for other reasons. Can you go to the next one? Here's kind of some of the specifics on it. Approximately 217 miles, that's the amount of ground or the amount of right-of-way we have on federally managed ground, most of it Forest Service and a significant portion BLM, a small amount of Bureau of Reclamation. I would add also, because we get a lot of comments on this, on private land, we're doing CEQA work, but the PUD is committed to not using eminent domain. Any right-of-way expansion we do on private ground, you know, be that SBI or other private individuals, we will negotiate something that is mutually acceptable to both sides. But we are doing the CEQA work in hopes of being able to get some right-of-way expansion on private ground too. Candidly, our biggest risk is on federal ground, and if you think about it intuitively, when that fire starts in the middle of the woods where nobody can see it, by the time somebody gets to it, it may be too late to get it out, given the fuel loads that exist now and the kind of hot, dry summers that we can have. Another thing that we're wanting to do that's a little different there, that last bullet, is right now our 20-foot easement is 10 feet from center line. Not that it makes much difference for such a tiny easement, but we want to be able to adjust our, you know, if we have a 130-foot easement in place, we may want 120 feet on the high side, you know, given some steep slopes that we have. You know, when you get on the low side, the bottom of the trees may be level with a power line, so it's making no sense not to use the right-of-way as effectively as possible. Can you go to the next one? Here's some of the things that we're doing. You know, we've had a consultant in the field already that's done a tremendous amount of biological and cultural resource studies, documentation. I can tell you the federal agencies are thrilled to get this kind of data. I don't think, well, there's not been this kind of comprehensive work done in this area, and I don't know when, if ever. But these are some of the methods that we're looking at for short-term right-of-way maintenance. Can you go to the next slide? Here's more. You know, this is another one, the top bullet there that we've been criticized on is a timber sale contract. And, you know, I don't want to, I'll be candid, we're spending $3 million on NEPA and CEQA. The PUD is not a large enough organization to clear you know, roughly, our portion is say roughly 3,400 acres or some portion of that 3,400 acres without capturing at least some of the value of that timber. I mean, to do that on an expense basis, well, that would be bankruptcy for us as well too. We just can't afford that kind of expense. So the fact that we have a local mill and that infrastructure here, you know, our really rough estimates is the value may be 10,000, or there might be 10,000 board feet per acre. You know, some of the stuff is really good, a lot of it's nothing. So when you mix that together, it is a piece of the puzzle that's important. We get some criticism for that, but it would seem ridiculous to me to waste that timber value. Next slide, please. So, and this is long-term right-of-way maintenance. Part of this is we're going to have an operation and maintenance plan that really details out by area what we can do and when. There's going to be sensitive areas where we'll have to get permission from agencies to go back in. But the idea behind this plan is in most areas it'll streamline maintenance. And you see the bullets there, you know, vegetation management, access roads. WAPA, the Western Area Power Administration, is also doing the same thing. I sometimes dwell on the PUD aspect of this because that's what I think about, but the WAPA line is actually critical. That, I call it the extension cord. That's the 60 kV line that comes from Trinity Dam, that substation at the dam, over to Weaverville and ties into our 60 kV system. It is responsible for serving 94% of our load. So Weaverville, Douglas City, Lewiston, and Hayford substations are all on that line. The small amount of load that's not are the PG&E transmission served stations in Hind Palm, Big Flat, Grouse Creek, and Forest Glen. So the ability to keep that line up is actually critical for Trinity County. I mean, it serves a vast majority of the load of Trinity County, all the schools here in town, the hospital, county offices. So that is also a big benefit, not just fire resiliency, but reliability, particularly that 60 kV line. Can you go to the next one? And here's, there'll be a later slide here that talks about the number of comments that we got, and I'll talk a little bit about what they're on, but I can tell you the number one comment we have is on herbicide use. And I wanted to put a slide in here that kind of lays out the difference in cost between mechanical right-of-way maintenance and herbicidal right-of-way maintenance. So the entire project is about 3,700 acres, about 3,400 acres that's a PUD, because remember WAPA's only got the 60 kV line. Our estimate for annual cost of treating that right away, once it's in I won't call it completely cleared, but once it's in its final state, once the trees that need to be removed have been removed, is about $600,000 annually. So that's based on a $700 per acre treatment cost with herbicide in a 4-year cycle. And this is not hypothetical. These are the numbers that the Western Area Power Administration has now. These are their actual costs. Because they have areas where they're doing herbicidal treatments everywhere they're allowed, and then they have areas where they're not allowed and they're doing mechanical treatment. To treat that same area would be $4.6 million a year if we had to do it mechanically. And that's assuming $4,100 per acre in treatment cost and a 3-year cycle, because with mechanical treatment you get quicker regrowth. And sometimes when you throw out big numbers, it's hard to put that into perspective. So the net annual cost, if you just split it among the 7,350 customers roughly we have for the PUD, is $60 a year, $5 a month, you know, on a PUD customer bill, if you just divided it evenly, looking at it simplistically. And the annual cost of mechanical treatment is 10 times that, $600 per year. Now, if you do the math, those numbers are net costs. My expectation is with wider rights of way, we'll save about $200,000 a year in overtime, but that's backing that off. So, you know, the net cost on the herbicidal treatments in $400,000 is $4.4 million for the mechanical treatment cost. Another way to put that in perspective, you know, big customers, you know, if I were the mill and I heard that and said, oh, you know, wow, $60 a year, that's not a big deal. It's about a 40% rate increase, 40%, not 4. So, it's not, the PUD, I'm not in love with herbicides, it's just, I want to give you the financial impact here, and, in my opinion, the project is probably not doable if we have to treat mechanically. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, here's the NEPA CEQA environmental review. These are the things that we're identifying. Later, there'll be a slide that gives you the dates on these. Let's go to the next slide. These are environmental issue areas that we've looked at. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is a list of big areas that we knew even in advance that we were going to look at. Next slide, please. So we had 2 Zoom scoping meetings because of COVID, and they were pretty well attended. We received 16 verbal comments in the 2 different scoping meetings, and I'll do the breakdown there. 2 agency comments, 7 organizational comments, 7 from individuals. Actually, I think Rick Tippett provided some verbal comments in one of the Zoom meetings. I can't remember which one. Interestingly, we received 664 total written comments. And when I first looked at that, I said, wow, that's an incredible number. But when you dove into it, and this is why this data is here, because I asked the consultant to put it together, it's 614 were form letters. EPIC, the environmental organization, sent out a email blast, I guess you would call it, and at the bottom of their description of the project, they had a pre-populated form where you could put in your name and where you're from and just hit send, and it automatically sent in a comment. So of those 664 written comments, 614 were form letters. Obviously, everybody has the opportunity to comment. I was interested in where those comments come from. 10 agency letters, 7 organizational comments, 33 individual comments. But the interesting thing to me is of the 614 form letters, only 22 of them were from Trinity County residents. And as you might imagine with an email blast from a national organization, there were comments from Alaska and Colorado and really all over the country. Not that anybody doesn't have the right to comment on our project. I'll admit to having real interest in what folks that are living with the danger, the fire danger, have to say. So that's why I share that data. Next slide, please. And so top of the list there, primary concerns, I mentioned it earlier, support of herbicide use. Matter of fact, a good number of the comments said, we really like the project, but don't use herbicides. I totally get that. It's just I don't think the project is feasible without herbicides, unfortunately. Their opposition to clear cutting. A number of comments said we don't think you need 130-foot right of way. I might add that 130 feet was based on a U.S. Forest Service study of the optimal width right of way to protect infrastructure in heavily wooded areas. I mean, it really directly applied to our infrastructure here. And the other thing it was based on is WAPA did a LiDAR survey where they looked at varying right-of-way widths, and basically when do you reach diminishing returns? At the 130-foot level, they reduced tree contacts by 87%. So that's another thing to tell you. This does not eliminate all tree contacts with our lines, but obviously beyond that, you've got to get so much bigger for diminishing returns that the 130-foot easement, their LiDAR study really was in alignment with the Forest Service study on protecting infrastructure. And then the others are loss of mature forest, concerning impacts to water quality, and concern of impact of viewshed. Next slide, please. And this is the schedule, the environmental impact report. I know the county is involved in some environmental impact reports, and as you know, you set a schedule. I have set an aggressive schedule, and I try to keep the consultants on that pace. Realistically, these dates may slip a little bit, but we're looking to publish a draft EIR the end of August this year. And my hope is that we would have a final EIR into April, early May in 2022. Those may be a little bit aggressive timelines, but that's the hope at this point. Next slide. And I'll take questions, and if you flip to the next slide, then if people online can see, this is a website to go to really look at detailed information. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions. The easier the questions, the better.
Supervisors, any questions you like that?
I can wait, but I have several.
Go ahead.
So, when it comes to the right-of-way clearing, I hear a lot of people, in fact, I got some comments today about goats. Do you have a cost estimate or a probability of using goats?
Well, you know, we've actually tried goats on our right-of-way. There's a guy in Red Bluff. We wanted to see how well it worked. He made a great effort. He basically said, don't call him back again. He lost several goats. And I'm not saying it's not feasible to use that in some areas, but to manage 3,400 acres of right-of-way maintenance with goats is, I'll just be blunt, it's completely infeasible. We're still, the PUD is still open to using them if we could get a contractor. You know, his model was actually free grazing. We pay him to clear the right-of-way. The goats get fat. He sells the goats for meat. But it didn't work because he lost too many goats while he was here. And he basically said, look, I tried it, don't call me, I'm not coming back. So, but if we could find somebody else that was interested, we might try it. Is it a mechanism for treating 3,400 acres on a regular basis? It's not reasonable to do that type of management in that fashion. There's not enough goats in the state of California to do that.
The other question I get is, why don't you just bury everything underground? And I saw that you didn't have a cost analysis. I know that's a high cost, but do you have a cost analysis on undergrounding?
Yeah, so that's actually a fantastic question, and I probably should start putting it in there because, you know, to a power engineer, when you look at our rugged terrain, it's kind of self-evident that undergrounding is not a realistic option, but it's not to the average person. You get in cities and things are underground. You know, and here's an area where we had demonstrated cost. We put about a little less than a mile section in the Roundy Road area underground where we had continual failures. We did the NEPA work with the Forest Service, and it cost us for less than a mile over $850,000. So if you translate that across our system, I mean, we're looking at $500 million. It's while it doesn't appear that that's not a rational solution, the cost of that is so great. I mean, it's bankruptcy. We couldn't even borrow the capital. That reminds me of another issue we've had. Since the Helena fire, not only have we lost fire liability insurance and now we're self-insured, but prior to the Helena fire, our bond rating was AA-. We had access to low-cost capital. Because of this fire liability risk, we're now BBB+, which is just a little above junk bond status. So if we go out and borrow money, it costs us a lot more. So even the ability, we don't even have the ability to borrow enough money. Not only could our rate base not afford to pay for it, we don't have the ability to borrow enough money to put all this underground.
So there's not even a realistic number of this would cost $100,000 a year per?
No, I mean, yeah, I could put something on a napkin, but it's so high, it's just unreal. And if you'll notice, even the huge, you know, PG&E and Edison aren't even realistically looking at large amounts of underground, and they have San Francisco and huge metropolitan areas to subsidize their rural areas. We don't have any of that.
Okay. Actually, those are the two I have now. I had another one, but I've lost it.
Morning, Paul.
Morning.
First question I had, you answered when you went through your program. Just curious if it was even feasible to do the project without herbicides, and you made it clear that it wasn't. If you were to use the herbicides, do you have safety precautions in mind?
So that's also a great question. You know, one thing I like to remind folks is we're in California. I consider our state the most environmentally conscious state in the United States. So we wouldn't use them ourselves. We would contract with licensed applicators. Not only would everything applied have to meet U.S. Environmental Protection Agency standards, but it would have to meet California standards. That, you know, the utilities in all the other counties in California are using herbicides in this fashion to maintain their rights of way. You know, the analogy kind of uses Caltrans. You know, Caltrans is doing roadside spraying in every county except Trinity. To me, it's I think we're putting ourselves at more danger by not using them. I will concede, nothing has zero environmental impact, and herbicides certainly have environmental impacts, but we would follow not only national safety requirements for their use, but also state safety requirements, and Californians are very stringent. The other 57 counties in the state are allowing this to happen in their counties. I mean, I guess that's the way I'd characterize it. And what you have to weigh against is the fire risk. Again, it's not that there's zero impact on. I know everybody rides to Reading, and I look at that landscape. That's not what I want to be my view from my house. And the impact of that's the no action alternative to our project.
Right, and I guess the other point that you could continue to speak to a little bit is these impacts, this risk that we've talked about has all been land, and we could push that further into loss of life, like the car fire.
Yeah, you know, that's now, so the car fire wasn't started by a utility, it was a roadside fire, you know, so then you could get into that argument whether roadside spraying should be done. Had it been being done, well, in Organ Mountain's another example. If roadside spraying had occurred on Organ Mountain, you know, there's been 3 fires on Organ Mountain since 2001. And while there was no loss of life in those, there was loss of structures. Car fire, 8 people died and 230,000 acres burned. You know, if you weigh that against, wow, if we were, I know that's a national recreation area, it's not a Caltrans area, but if we weigh that against, you know, the impact of herbicide use, you know, that's the debate, right? Is 230,000 acres, 8 people died. And we don't want that to happen as a result of a tree contract with one of our power lines. The PUD will be bankrupt.
Thank you.
Supervisors, any questions?
Paul, I saw your estimate on the homeowner bill, herbicide versus mechanical restoration. Could you give me, if you could, what it would do, how would it affect our mill? You know, huge.
Oh, it would be, that's why I like to also put it in terms of percentage rate increase, you know, because, you know, $600 a year to the mill is trivial, but a 40% rate increase, well, I haven't asked Frank that. It's actually a conversation I wouldn't enjoy, but I can't, I'm sure it would have a big impact on the mill. And, you know, our latest load growth is cannabis cultivators. Anybody with a large service to see a 40% rate increase is going to be detrimental to their business model. And I can't imagine, to me, the project, that's why I say the project's not feasible, because I don't think it's realistic for us to raise rates 40% to cover the maintenance on just this.
Right. I'm sure CEQA is taken care of. As you know, I'm a fishing guide and concerned about the watershed and the river, but I'm also concerned about the rate bear equally. So with that being said, I think I said no.
Thank you.
I would have some questions about herbicide use. That's the biggest concern I've got from people in my district. There's very little tea put in my district, but High Palm, Forest Glen, and most people in those areas are concerned about herbicide use. I know that glyphosate's been in the news, and I would be interested in what kind of herbicides you were planning on using, and if there really would be that much of a benefit, where to me, and I'm not an electrical engineer and I don't run a public utility, but to me the biggest issue would be tree strikes. It takes a long time, whether you mechanically maintain that line or use herbicides. Doug-fir trees don't get that tall that fast. So I'm just wondering if they're really, and well, and this, the other issue I saw, just looking at your slides, we had it was 10 times as expensive on your slide to do mechanical, but your numbers were not 10 times different. So I don't understand that. It's $600 or $700 an acre to do herbicide, it should be $7,000 an acre to do mechanical if it's going to be 10 times the increase to the paying customers in my mind. And so, but I just, that would be my biggest concern with the entire issue is, I know there is a lot of concern for herbicide use, and there are a lot of people in Trinity County who, whether it's the right way to do things or not, we kind of like to be the only county that doesn't do something. So, and if you don't believe that, just wait till the stoplight comes back. So, that would be my concern, and I would like to know, I would like to see what kind of herbicides were planned on being used, and if you're looking into more non-traditional herbicides. I know one of the things that you hear from cannabis cultivators and stuff, white vinegar is an herbicide and it's not going to cause cancer. Those kind of things would be of interest to me.
So just to address a little bit, the reason it's not 10 times is the herbicides are a 3-year cycle, the mechanical is a 4-year cycle. So, I mean, you'll have the presentation, you can go back and rework the math, you'll see that's where the difference turns out to be. And I guess my very early on, I mean, this is still in the study phases, answer is we would seek to use whichever herbicides have the least environmental impact. I mean, we want what's effective and the lowest environmental impact. And that continues to evolve as technology advances. You know, the herbicides available today are completely different than the herbicides available 30 or 40 years ago. And so we're seeking a 30-year permit. That same process would continue to evolve over that 30-year period, but I can absolutely commit to you, we want to use the least environmentally harmful chemicals possible. And I'm hearing from those people just like you. I got a letter yesterday from someone saying
I've actually got 2 while we've been here.
Yeah.
My other question on herbicide use would be, and I've got this question before, utilities through people's private property, you own that right away, but are you willing to work with those people and say, okay, we're not going to use herbicides on, it's like some of the people I've heard from, organic farmers, okay, if you have teapot spraying herbicides through they lose their organic.
So great question, and thank you for bringing it up. On that private ground, we will not use herbicides without the owner's permission. And again, on that private ground where people are there on a regular basis, we don't have the same level of risk. You know, likely in most of those locations, we don't even need 130-foot easement. Would we like to have more easement than we have? Probably so, but we're not going to take their land without permission. We're not going to use herbicides without their permission.
I've got a couple questions. Is there any discussion on using the clearings for recreational uses such as mountain biking or trails, equestrian, anything like that? Would that be an option?
I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about it. I don't know, that's worth looking at, I guess.
I'd be very interested in that as far as that ability to expand potential recreational activities at the same time and making it kind of educational, showing that, you know, it's a 2-for-1. We're expanding mountain bike trails, hiking trails, equestrian trails, eliminating fire danger, and, you know, bringing visitors in to see how California has to adapt to the fire climate changes and stuff.
Yeah, just totally off the cuff, so don't hold me to this, but you know, I have some board members that are really interested in those topics, and I would think my board would look at that favorably. If I'm looking at hurdles, it would be, you know, Forest Service BLM permission to use the right-of-way in that fashion, but it's something worth looking at.
Okay. Yeah, if you're able to do that, I think that'd be a benefit. As far as the herbicides go, do you think that the main herbicide use is for hack and squirting after it's been mechanically removed and to prevent shrubbery from regrowing, or is it for actual tree growth control?
Well, so I think it's a combination. And again, there's people way more expert in herbicide use than me. But I think after the initial right-of-way treatment is done, from a maintenance standpoint, it is a combination of preventing big species and pre-emergence. I mean, so in terms of hack and squirt, I doubt there's much of that because, you know, within the right-of-way, we plan to remove this is not a timber management plan. So I think my guess is the majority would be individuals with backpack sprayers walking through the easement, which, especially on steep slopes, also has some environmental advantages over using a masticator, in terms of soil disturbance, and then that loose sediment washing into streams and that type of thing. But that's part of what's being studied now, candidly. So you'll see more of that in the draft EIR.
You think in that draft EIR they will specify the exact herbicide they plan on using?
Well, I think there will be a list of allowed herbicides. It won't be one because, different herbicides for different applications.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Any additional questions?
Yeah, I would have a follow-up. Excuse me here. So you've mentioned the term bankruptcy, and, we all, that's a word that shudders all of us, but what exactly does that mean? Obviously that the power wouldn't shut off today, but what would that mean to the people of Trinity County?
Let me grab a letter real quick I've got here. I thought this might come up, and I'll leave you with copies of this. This is a letter from CAL FIRE. So we had a fire last summer, 5-acre fire. It's called the Fellows Fire. It was in the Odd Fellows camp, if you know, off 299 in Lewiston. 5-acre fire. It was a fire drop. And CAL FIRE sent us this letter. I got this letter on January 21st of this year. And I'm not going to read it all, and I'll leave it with you. It says, please consider this an official notice of claim that CAL FIRE intends to seek recovery of its cost for suppressing and investigating the Fellows Fire. CAL FIRE will send you a letter of demand once it has made a final determination of its fire suppression, investigative, and other administrative costs associated with the Fellows Fire. If you have any questions, contact me. But here's a part in bold that I really like. In the event you have insurance which may cover these damages, please forward this letter to your agent and ask that he or she contact me. If you fail to do so, CAL FIRE reserves the right to notify your insurer directly. Well, we don't have any insurer. I'm it. The PUD self-insures. So in the Helena fire, while we faced $138 million in claims, we settled for our insurance limits, which were $10 million. The way I would envision that happening, not just me, our attorneys envision it happening now, is whatever money we have in the bank, so right now that's about $6 million. If you have a claim, if you have $100 million in claim, they're going to take everything you have. And maybe a little beyond that if they feel like you can raise rates to some degree to bring in some money quickly. So then, immediately after this, of course, you're bankrupt. You have to reorganize under bankruptcy, which means you got to raise rates. Then you come back and you build your reserve again, because we obviously have to have reserves. Use Forest Glen as an example. We hadn't had any money in the bank. We couldn't have rebuilt that infrastructure while we were waiting for reimbursement from the government. So I call this a serial bankruptcy model that only drives rates higher. I guess under a worst case scenario, somebody could buy us out of bankruptcy and the PUD wouldn't exist. Maybe PG&E takes back over the assets. I guess that's a theoretical possibility. But we're really in uncharted territory here because utilities across the state, because of strict liability, are all losing their fire liability insurance. As an example, the City of Reading does not have fire liability insurance. The City of Shasta Lake does not have fire liability insurance. And think of their risk profile versus ours. I not braggingly say that we have the worst fire liability territory in the nation. Because you can't have the worst unless you're in California, because nobody else has strict liability, and I think we have the worst fire liability territory in California. That makes us have the worst fire liability territory in the entire nation, which is why we're pursuing the RAP project. And I'm sorry I rambled there. Did that?
No, I think that gives people a vision of what could happen.
And even CAL FIRE, it's not just plaintiff attorneys that come after the money in these deals. CAL FIRE is doing it. I can tell you my employees have taken a different, they were shocked when we got this letter. You know, we have a cooperative relationship with CAL FIRE. This letter implies that we did something on purpose or we were negligent, and in no way were we. But yet, they're still going to seek to recover everything they can. We got a notice on the hobo fire from the U.S. Forest Service, preserve any and all evidence. It's an indication that there's a high likelihood they're going to send us a claim and may litigate on that fire. So, and that one's much larger than 5 acres.
So I assume in the EIR, I mean, there are organic herbicides that all options will be taken.
Every option will be analyzed, yes.
And then, I guess the general question, I really appreciate you coming and informing us, which informs the people that are watching. Are you asking anything of us, or are you just informing us?
Yeah, it's just informational at this, though. If there's anything that the county can do to support the project, I would ask that, I guess, in generic terms, because we don't cover all of Trinity County, but we cover 80% of it. You know, 2,200 out of the 3,300 square miles, roughly, of the county. And I know Supervisor Frazier, most of your folks get power from PG&E in your district, but the vast majority of everywhere else gets their power from Trinity PUD. So yeah, anything that you can do to help with the project is much appreciated.
Well, me and Jeremy are the two board members, and maybe that can actually have an honest outside view, since we don't use.
Oh, you're both off grid?
We're both off grid.
So our bankruptcy won't affect you?
Oh, you are too?
Yep.
All right, so again, Trinity County has 3.
That's a little depressing to me that the majority of the board are not PUD customers. I hadn't thought about it until you just brought it up. Maybe we need to do some more line extensions.
Okay. I'll hold you to that one.
Oops.
Yeah. Speaking of bankruptcy, I'm done. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Well, unless there's any other additional comments from the board, we appreciate you taking the time and answering questions. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just drop these off with them.
And I guess, Paul, there's a lot of people watching today. I don't know if it's about you, but who do people give questions to? Or do they wait for the EIR and make comments there?
Actually, waiting for the EIR is probably better, because, and they said a lot of questions were submitted in the comments. Likely the questions they have are in those comments and are being analyzed and will be, we'll see the result in the EIR. Though, obviously, if anybody wants to talk to me, I'm happy to talk to anybody about it. Letters, phone calls, emails. Yeah. Thank you again.
Is Mr. Moore zooming in?
Unfortunately, he had a conflict, and because of our timing issues, he will be presenting another Thursday.
Okay.
So we will not be receiving our presentation from him today.
All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you for that update. Too bad. We'll wait next time. With that, we will go into public comment.
Jeremy,
No.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you'd like to notify, we're able to do a one-time purchase and get up to 500 participants for today and probably next meeting, and then determine if that's something that we'll continue to require.
Okay.
We'd like to notify people on YouTube that we now have capability up to 500 participants.
All right. So if you did not hear that, we went ahead and updated our Zoom version in the midst of the meeting to allow for over 100 participants. We are at 101. However, if people are watching on the YouTube, they are welcome to join the Zoom again or call in for a public comment, and we should be able to accommodate the high volume of individuals. With that, we'll go into public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on this agenda or within the consent calendar. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up or schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. And is there anyone wishing to make public comment first? No. Emma, do you want to see if anyone's raising their hand on Zoom?
Sure. I don't have any hands raised at this time. We can.
All right. Mr. Blanco.
Good morning still. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. How refreshing to not be talking about cannabis for a moment, which is either a blessing or a scourge, the way you look at it, but I think we can all agree that wildfire is a scourge, and it's unfortunately one that we're going to face whether we want to or not. I know we just had a presentation about one approach to it, but as what unfortunately seems like it could be another intense fire season bears down upon us, I want to acknowledge, our first responders, our sheriff's department has been excellent in managing kind of the competing concerns. I know many people, I think some people in this room, some people on this board have seen or participated in the saving of homes and structures by remaining behind an evacuation order. That is something that happens in Trinity County. I'm not saying we should encourage something like that to happen, but we should acknowledge the reality that that does happen, and that in the event that things like that do happen, we should be realistic about that. And rather than having to try and run blockades and stuff, I don't think people staying behind an evacuation should be on the roads when emergency equipment needs to be on the roads. But if we get a designated time for resupply or arrange some sort of in and out, again, I know there's been kind of a on-the-ground application of this with our sheriff's department. I think that's appropriate, but I would encourage us to have maybe a workshop where we can develop a policy. I know, for instance, Connecticut does a waiver for hurricanes. If you want to stay at your house on the beach when there's a hurricane order, you sign something and then you're allowed. Obviously you can stay if you don't sign it too, but you can get in and out privileges for resupply and things like that. So taking some approach to how we're going to address the evacuations we know are going to come with the wildfires we know they're going to come. For lack of a better term, our fire militias, the people that may stay behind to protect their property. Also, on the subject of fire and fuels reduction, which we know is, be it for the PUD right away or any fuels reduction, let's not forget for manual service, we do have the opportunity to impose that as a condition for crimes. We have a whole zombie army waiting to clear brush. Thank you.
Anybody raising their hand on Zoom?
Yes, we have a Jeff.
There's a Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Cadella, Xenia.
Please proceed.
Can you hear me? I'd like to reiterate what Tom Belanco just said. I experienced fire here in Xenia, and my neighbors who weren't here because they evacuated or maybe they were just second homes, they lost everything. And I lost some structures, but I also saved a lot because I stayed. There's absolutely no incentive to leave. You're gonna lose everything. There was no help. I received no help. I had to do it all myself, and yeah, I had to do a little sneaking around to get into the fire zone after resupply to keep my generators running so I could keep my well running, so I had water to fight with. I think something should be done, especially in this area. You know, there was never any abundance of equipment on the road that I somehow would have gotten the way of. You know, we were left to fend for ourselves, and that's what we did. And it's a requirement that you protect your property. There was no help, so why should I be forced to leave? Or if I do leave, I can't get back when I'm going to get food or gas or whatever it is. There needs to be a way for just ordinary citizens to do their part to protect their structures as well as their neighbors. There was a lot of that down here as well, where if everything's calm at your place, you go to your neighbor's place and see what they needed. Anyways, I just think there needs to be something for property owners to get into their property so they can defend it, because there's nobody else that's going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else wanting to make public comment? I'm not seeing anything on Zoom. Is there anyone in the lobby who's wanting to speak today?
I will make a public comment.
Thank you.
Today I'm speaking, Keith Groves, Trinity Center, speaking as a private business person in Trinity County. Again, I brought this issue up last year. I've talked to the CAO about it. It's our CUPA, and the CUPA is the environmental toxic waste license that most businesses in Trinity County are supposed to have. Probably very few do. 2 years ago, that license was about $280. Last year it was last year it was $550. This year that license was just under $800. And that's for me, I have two parts. One is I have to have a license to say I don't have to have a license. And then I have to store the more than 50 gallons of fuel. They don't come out, they don't have set standards, they just charge $800 a year. We are the only county in Trinity County. Trinity County is the only county in the state of California that doesn't have its own program. I have a neighbor in Lewiston. For his auto shop, he spends $1,600 a year. I would assume that my $800 is about as small as it gets. So if there's 200 businesses that need this license, that's $160,000. I would think that the county could come in and manage this program, and I would hope that through environmental health, there's been discussions about this before, that this moves forward and saves Trinity County businesses money. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else on Zoom wanting to speak?
Darryl?
Yeah, Darryl Ford, Weaverville. I think pretty soon the census is going to come out, and when it does, the main thing that's going to impact the county initially will be redistricting of the supervisorial districts. And I just wanted to remind folks that when that goes forward, there's a lot of ways of doing it, but I think you should be sure and bring the elections department into that mix, because they probably are the ones most impacted by, besides you members yourselves, the way the districts are laid out, that sort of thing. So as you go through a plan of figuring out a redistricting plan, make sure that you've brought the elections department into the mix, because they have a big impact. It has a big impact on them of how they run their elections and whatnot. So just a comment to make. Over time, I've watched that become a real difficult problem for elections departments when they weren't brought into the mix, and it created districts that were very difficult to manage from elections perspective. So, thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
All right, is there anyone else on Zoom wanting to speak? And anyone else in the lobby? I think we're ready to go.
All right.
I'd like to speak. I put it in the chat.
Oh, thank you, I must have missed it. Okay, please state your name.
Am I heard?
Yes, please state your name and then you can start.
Okay. My name's Dana Scott from Hayfork. I wanted clarification. I was getting kicked out at the very beginning of the meeting because there were too many people, so I don't know if I missed it. Is public appearance open to all and accessible?
Yeah, this is public comment for items not appearing on the agenda.
No, I mean in person, being able to appear in person rather than on Zoom.
Yes, so members of the public have been making public comment today.
If she's asking,
Okay,
we're going to start
so
allowing an audience in the boardroom. We're moving towards that. We're working with public health. We have moved down the state color chart, which would actually allow us to have people in here. However, we're still subject to the social distancing and mask mandate. So if we allow the public in here, we have to make sure the chairs are 6 feet apart. So we're going to be limited to probably no more than 10 participants. So if people want to start participating, that's something we're looking at doing and how we can accommodate with the social distancing component.
Thank you. And also, I would like to request a fee study for the cannabis dollars that have come into the county since 2016. A full accounting, everything that's come in and where.
There'll be a budget review in which you can inquire into that information and it is made public.
A budget review isn't the same as a fee study.
We're actually in the midst of doing a fee study right now, which was approved by the Board of Supervisors. We have a $50,000 contract with Craig Goodman, who's our financial consultant, and he is in the midst of doing a fee study right now, which we should have, I'm hoping, because we're going to be entering into budget times in, May, June, so I'm hoping to get it later this month.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak, please.
Please go ahead.
Good day, Chair Brown and Supervisors. John Brower from Junction City, and very thoughtful comments so far today. I know it's going to be a long day, so I'll keep this short. I think meetings like this that are going to bring many participants, controversial items, I think the county would be well served by utilizing the fairgrounds in Hayfork for meetings like this. There's plenty of space there for social distancing during COVID. There's plenty of parking, bathrooms. It's an asset to the community that I think is underutilized, and it could be a good option for things like this. And also in addition to a fee study of the cannabis program, I think what's really warranted is more of a projection or a forecast into the resources required to properly staff and resource our planning department and our cannabis division of our planning department. Not just for cannabis chores, but many, many other basic planning projects just never seem to happen here. Simple things like rezones, lot line adjustments, and so on. So I'd really like to see a look into the future on what would be a properly resourced department. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional Zoom viewers wishing to make public comment? Hearing none and seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to the consent calendar.
Mr. Chair, I'm confused on how we do this anymore. So when do we take the public's view and ask an item to be agendized or to considered.
Well, any board member can take it on, that is my understanding.
So, is this the appropriate time to do that, or?
Yeah, what I believe the process is, because I was one that helped create it, was before we start the consent calendar, the chair will ask if there's any board members that like to pull something, or if there's any, have they been reached out to by constituents, or is there anybody in the audience that would like to ask a board member to pull something at that time. If the board feels, the board person feels that the board report is adequate and doesn't need further discussion, then they have the option not to pull it if they choose not to. But yeah, this is the correct time.
I understand that for the agenda, but we had comments on looking into the fire issue and giving direction. Would I do that now, or would I wait for your board report, or?
You can do that at any time. It's the chair's pleasure when you take over, but direction for future agenda items can be raised at any time during the board meeting.
Okay. So we had a couple of comments about the fires and the necessity to stay, and most of the time the sheriff's department works around. I'm sure it's happened down there, it's happened in my area. I would also like to maybe have a look at that through, I don't know who, Fire Safe or whatever. And then along with that process, we used to have, and I think it's still in place, but we have no personnel, that we had local, and there's a name for this that I'm forgetting right now, but we had local fire experts and local experts that worked within the camps to relay county issues on. And there's a specific name for that.
Liaison.
Yeah, okay, the county liaison, and we had that, it was very successful for a while, but I think it was more just people kind of faded away, or we had a few years. I think that would be a good thing to look at and reinstate, because they bring a lot of really good local information into the fire camps and relay that onto people. So if we could somehow, I don't know what department or where we could talk about that. I'm requesting the board to give a CEO another task among these 10,000 of them.
All right. Any other comments from the supervisors on Keith's request?
Seems like a good request, something that we should deal with probably. I know there was a lot of issues with that. In my area, I've actually got a lot of comments about that, even volunteer fire departments that could not go out of the road blocks and resupply. Ketton Home especially had difficulty. So it is an issue that needs to be addressed when you can't get fuel for your fire engine because you're evacuated. Somebody needs to use some common sense. And having the county help supply the common sense would be a good plan.
And I would agree with that and add to it that our locals are the ones who know the topography, and you get people that come in and we're appreciative of that when they come in from outside the state to help in our need, but taking direction from the folks that are here that understand our area specifically is really important.
I would like to agree with Dan and Jill. During the car fire, we saw quite a few people that were evacuated or did leave and were not allowed back into their home for several days, weeks at a time, actually. And CAL FIRE sent people up here from every part of the state, and honestly, didn't even know the names of the roads and where these people lived, how far the fire was from the location they were trying to get back to. And I think it severely impacted a lot of people, their livestock, their supply of food, their fuel. So if we could get a little bit more of a local input into that, that would be great and beneficial to the people.
All right. So, keep looking for more specific action than that.
Well, I would maybe task Dr. Coons with how we would go forward in And is that something we would just talk to the fire council, or, I mean, how would we, do we have to set up a separate council of people to come up with that? I know we have in place for the advisors, there's another term for it, I have it written someplace, to advertise to get some more of those people in. So just whatever ideas that can come up and present to us at some other meeting.
Okay. Do you think it would be at all relative to the Fire Safe Council and having a standing board member? I think that is on the agenda. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that could be something that
opens the door.
I have not been on many of those activities on my tenure, so I'm not super familiar on what authority they have.
Okay.
Just being on the disaster councils all the time.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we will proceed with the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters and will be acted upon by the board by one roll call motion. If a member of the public has any questions or comments on an item on the consent calendar, they may provide them now. A member of the board or staff may request an item be pulled and considered separately. Are there any items wishing to be pulled and considered separately from the board? Hearing none, how about
Got one. I'd like to pull 5-2.
Sorry, you're running the three. Okay.
My fault.
Only three.
Do we have any items that we wish to have pulled? Currently, I have
3.12.
3.12. 3.12.
Yes.
And are there any members from staff that would like to have an item pulled and considered separately? All right.
3.13.
With that, I'd entertain a motion. Anyone want a motion on the changes, adopt the changes?
I will make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus items 3.12 and 3.13.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Emma, please pull the board.
Supervisor Groves, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox? Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, item 3.12, authorize the chairman to sign a letter supporting SB 59, cannabis licenses, no fiscal impact. Supervisor Groves?
I was hoping that maybe we would put this off because there's more information that we might need to get before we fully send this letter off. I would just request we put this off for another meeting. I don't know the timing on this. The concept, I'm very supportive of this, but that's what my request is.
All right. Does any other board member have any technical questions for Supervisor Groves?
Keith, do you think there'll be significant language added to this that will strengthen SB 59, and how long?
I would hope by the next meeting we would have some definitions that we could ask for requests at that time.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, is there any public comment on this item? Please, Lisa.
Good afternoon now, Chairman Brown, Supervisors. Lisa Wright from Lewiston. I do urge the board to support SB 59. I'm not sure about changes to your letter or that kind of thing, but I think it's really imperative for our local farmers because we're going to hit a, I want to say we're going to hit a closure, right? Where CDFA will no longer be able to issue licenses, provisional licenses, which by provisional at the state basically means you don't have your local CEQA completed, it's in process, you have to show in process, and you may or not have your CDFW letter of agreement or non-agreement letter. Those are kind of the two things you need to do in scientific review. So right now, with the urgency ordinance basically allowing through September the extension, and the county without a plan on how you're going to review CEQA, even though there's an EIR in place, you're going to have from September till the end of the year, if SB 59 doesn't pass, to get CEQA, everybody through the process. You're talking 300 some farmers potentially. I don't think the county staff has any capability certainly to do that. Even if you were to outsource it, it would be extremely challenging in a 3-month window to do those numbers. So then you're going to be looking at people who don't have CEQA completed come the first of the year, aren't able to renew CDFA licenses, and you're putting potentially hundreds of businesses out of business. So I think it's really imperative that you do support this and encourage the state to take some kind of action to extend that process, because Trinity is not alone. Local jurisdictions all over the state have struggled with it. We're in really actually a pretty good position compared to some now, because we do have that final EIR, but it's still that review period and really the inability for us to accomplish that in the time frame under the existing law. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And I believe you have someone on Zoom that wants to make a comment.
Yes, we have Adrian Keys next.
Hey, good afternoon. Adrian Keys from Hayfork. I would like to speak a little bit to Keys' comments. There is a timeline. It's not super critical right this second. This bill did just pass through Business and Professions Committee yesterday, 12-0 unopposed. I think it's going to be in the Office of Environmental Review in their committee later on this week. And I just want to indicate, how important this is, not just to the program participants, but to everybody in the state and the county. Without the provisional program, there would be no program to speak of. There would be no potential for the equity grants. There would be no potential for the Forest Service or the Fish and Wildlife Reclamation and Watershed Improvement grants. And there'd be no funding for the Department of Corrections grants that our county recently received. All of this is predicated on the concept of provisional licensing. And the state right now has about 75, pushing 80% of the operators in the state are operating in a provisional position right now. So it really is, it's the bulk and the bread and butter of the industry at large statewide, and is being taken advantage of in every single jurisdiction throughout the state. Every jurisdiction issues some sort of local authorization to allow the state to issue a provisional license. So if this comes back at a further date, I hope any information you may need, anything about the language or whatnot, I'd be happy to answer questions. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
And then we have a Catherine Sidman.
Catherine Sidman, Lewiston Road, Lewiston. Just speaking, I want to echo what Adrian just shared, and also speaking to Supervisor Grove's desire to wait a minute. I request some sort of commitment from the board not to wait too long. 2 weeks is probably reasonable, but certainly I feel like the board has enough information at this point to send a letter in support of the bill and then follow up later on in the process with more granular comments. But for right now, I just strongly encourage the board to send that letter of support to protect the momentum that we have in the county.
Thank you for your comments.
We have a phone caller.
You need to state their number.
It's a 530-739. Want me to read the whole phone number?
Maybe just the last 4 digits.
Well, it's not Zoom, so.
If there's a caller wishing to make comment, please speak up.
Okay. We'll come back to them because there's another one. Oh,
I'm so sorry, I just figured it out.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, my name is Rhoda Kane. I am a member of TCAA, and I think that Trinity County should show their support for SB 59 as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
Okay, now we have P. Live.
Hello? Hello, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, my name is Patricia Lai. I'm an engineer and a cannabis consultant based out of Arcata. I am a member of the Trinity County Cannabis Alliance as well as Mendocino and Humboldt County. The bulk of my work has been in Humboldt. As a resident here for 15 years in terms of like the legalization process, but I have helped out farmers in Mendocino as well as Trinity. And you know, I come from a background of just like macro logistics and actually international policy development and program rollout. And so it's just been, you know, the last 4 or 5 years in the Emerald Triangle has been an interesting moment. You know, it's historic and it's singular, and you know, we're witnessing democracy at work, and also, you know, kind of, debugging these policies and programs and these whole things. So I just, as someone who has operated mostly in Humboldt, but has operated, you know, in all 3 Emerald Triangle counties, I just want to commend Trinity County, and my experience there with my few clients has been really excellent, and the way your approach has been to your people and in your treatment and the civility and the humanity of that, I just wanted to say thank you, and I see that, and I see the difference, and you know, I concur that with some of the other comments that you know, helping support that state initiative to extend the provisionals. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
We have Sarah Small.
Good afternoon. I apologize for that delay. I was stuck on mute. Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sarah Smale. I am an attorney in Nevada County, and I work with cannabis businesses throughout Northern California, including Trinity. I first want to thank you for taking the time to address cannabis issues and encourage you to support SB 59. Our state producers throughout, our cannabis producers in the state, the overwhelming majority of them hold provisional licenses, primarily related to CEQA issues, and SB 59 is required to avoid a potential extinction event for cannabis producers throughout the state, particularly in the legacy producing regions where the CEQA compliance is difficult, which brings into play the second element of SB 59, which would ensure that local jurisdictions continue to have local authorization to allow provisional license pending full CEQA compliance. The statutes currently allow applicants to indicate that they are undergoing compliance for CEQA, and they can operate under a provisional license in the interim while that's being achieved. So I just want to encourage you to support SB 59 as it's currently written, and thank you for taking the time to address this important issue.
Thank you for your comments.
And we have Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Gadella, Xenia, the attorney from Nevada City who just spoke. I'd like to reiterate what she said. This is for the whole state. Trinity's not dealing with this provisional license issue alone. Mendocino's in a far worse position than Trinity is. Santa Barbara County, which is also a huge amount of licenses down there. I believe it's 83% of all the licenses are provisional at this point. So that's an extinction if SB 59 doesn't get passed, and I'd like to encourage all the board members to sign the document and send it in to the state to show Trinity's support. To extend these provisional licenses, it's been so difficult due to CEQA to finalize this process. It's taken much longer than the original authors of this bill realized. And it is in the bill that, written into the law, that provisional licenses can be issued during the implementation of CEQA before it's completed. The county's getting sued over this by a group of, reefer madness holdover from the the 80s or the 70s or the 60s that say we can't do this, and we absolutely can. Every county allowing cultivation allows provisional licenses, period. For some reason, Trinity's dealing with this unique group of cannabis haters, and they're not being well represented by their counsel in the lawsuit, and Trinity needs to stop settling with this group and take them to task and, stand up for the cultivators and the program and the revenue that it's going to bring in, not just with the huge license fee, but with the tax that's going to be brand new this year. It's a virtual windfall that you guys can say, yes, we need this money, we want this money, we want cultivators to pay their dues. The tax passed with 70%. So I'd say a majority of Trinity residents support this. I think it's time for the county to step up and step up for the cultivators and Trinity County's #1 economic engine. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Emma, any additional Zoom hands raised out there?
Yep, next we have Carla Avila.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, this is Carla Avila from High and Palm. Thank you so much for the opportunity to bring up SB 59, and I really hope that the board will not hold up too long in its support of this very important and impactful bill. As many commenters have already spoken on this, I will not try and get into it too much, but it's really important to note that there is currently in state law a legal pathway for while CEQA compliance is underway for businesses to operate. And Senator Ana Caballero yesterday in the Senate Business Professions and Economic Development Committee hearing on SB 59 pointed out that this bill meets the spirit and intent of the original legislation, which developed the provisional licensing program to provide a stable, reliable path for California's cannabis industry to maintain operations while transitioning into this newly regulated market. And we know that there are a lot of complexities to this situation, but the state has recognized the inherent conflicts between CEQA law, local jurisdictional authority, the cannabis regulatory framework, the multiple CDFA versus local lead agencies, and what results in a massive systemic regulatory failure across the state and the need for massive reforms, which are evidenced by the governor's budget proposal and the plan to consolidate the state's 3 licensing agencies into 1, as well as the legislators' recognition of the need to extend provisional licensing at the state level, which also grants local jurisdictions a continued exemption and authority to give local authorization for projects where CEQA is underway, even if not yet completed. SB 59 would directly solve this issue. This does not necessarily mean it would be necessary for a county to issue provisional types of licenses, but it is duly given this authority to issue provisionally in Business and Professions Code 26050.2 and 26055, which SB 59 would extend for 6 more years. This is not, I want to be clear that this is not to kick the CEQA can down the road. That is a myth. This is to adhere to CEQA law. And we have a certified PEIR and Appendix C checklist. We have a solution, provided that we have the time and the staff to carry out the process. And that is exactly why this bill is in existence today, because we are not the only county facing this crisis. We were tasked with something that is an insurmountable task in the amount of time given thus far, and our legislator is attempting to resolve this problem urgently. Thank you for your opportunity to comment.
Thanks for your comments.
We have Deirdre Brower.
Hi, my name is Deidre Brower, and I just wanted to encourage the board to support SB 59, let the state know. And that's all. Thank you for your time.
What's for your comments?
And Hayes Family Farm.
Hi, thanks. This is Steve from Junction City. I'm going to make it quick here. This state bill directly addresses, the same situation that Trinity County finds itself in right now with the TAA lawsuit. This is a statewide problem. The state is trying to come up with a solution that can be implemented across the entire state, because pretty much every county is stuck in this quagmire, this tying up courts, it's tying up licenses. Trinity County should clearly support this. No matter what side of the issues you stand on, this is a statewide solution that directly addresses one of the most sticky situations that we find ourselves in. So I encourage the board to sign on and support. It doesn't really, I don't see any downside to the board offering their support of this, of the state finding a solution that can work for everyone. We should clearly support this. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
John?
Thank you. This is John Ledman from Douglas City. Can you hear me okay?
Some slight issues.
Hello?
Go for it.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'm neither a reefer madness holdover nor a cannabis hater, but there's some real misconception going on here, which I think may just distract from more central problems that the board needs to deal with. The code sections that were referred to a few minutes ago, 62052.5 and 26050.5 and 26055, relate to licensing authorities. Licensing authorities are not counties. Licensing authorities in that section of the B&P code are defined in 26001A. Make it long story short, this legislation will not affect Trinity County. It only relates to ordinances passed by local jurisdictions such as Trinity County. We're already past that. We have our ordinance in place. We have our EIR in place. That's it. We won't be affected by this legislation. Thank you for your time, and I urge you to consult with CEQA counsel the board has. That attorney is truly an expert in this field, and I wish you would check with him before you take action on this, not to discourage the board from endorsing SB 59. It would help out counties who do not yet have a cultivation ordinance in place, but it doesn't affect Trinity County. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
Anyone else wanting to make a public comment?
Yes. I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, please begin.
Once again, John Brower from Junction City, and if the board has additional questions or definitions that they would like to seek further guidance on before voting on this matter, it is important that this be taken up today. Perhaps there could be greater discussion now regarding those definitions, further questions. Public hearing like this is a great opportunity for that. So I encourage the board to try to address any concerns now during this public hearing and vote on this matter today. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Is there anyone else with public comment?
I'd like to speak, please.
Okay, you can start whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Lori Wells, and I'm in Lewiston. And I would just like to comment that I have several commercial cannabis farms in my neighborhood. And every day I watch them grow and grow and grow. And I'm not aware of any of them complying with CEQA. So I would just like to put it out there that I think it's definitely necessary that CEQA studies be completed on both a site-specific and a cumulative basis, especially in our neighborhood here in Lewiston. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else with public comment? Trinity Alves Canacraft.
Good afternoon, board. This is Matt Jefferson from Coffee Creek. I'm just going to keep this short. I would like to urge you to support SB 59. That it is the beneficial thing for all the cultivators in the county. Fine. Have a good day.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else? Oh, Walter Wood?
Yeah, I just wanted to voice my support for SB 59 also. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Is there anyone else with public comment?
Hearing none, we will go ahead and just to clarify, I believe Supervisor Groves, you were hoping to...
Yeah, I think I agree with virtually everyone on the line today, and I think this is an important bill, but I'm not certain and that everybody understands what this bill may or may not do, and I don't think this board is certain at this time, and I'm asking this not to be delayed more than until the next meeting. That by the next meeting, we should have a better understanding of exactly what this bill does or doesn't do, and then at that time, we can make our comments more appropriate to what we would like to see added or not added. So that's what I'm requesting. If we pass, if we vote for it today, I would support it, but I worry that this is not going to do what people think it's going to do.
Okay. Would you like to raise your desire in the form of a motion?
Yes, I would like to rehear this meeting, or this on the agenda for the next board meeting.
All right.
I'll second.
All right. Emma, we have a motion and a second. Let's hold the board.
And my comment is to make clear that that motion was no later than the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's no long delay.
Motion by Supervisor Groves, second by Supervisor Cox. Supervisor Cox, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. So for listeners, this item is going to be coming back at the next board meeting, the next regular board. All right. Next item is 3.13, County Administrative Office. Approve an agreement with Trinity County Visitors and Development Bureau, Trinity County Historical Society, Trinity County Arts Council, Weaverville Chamber of Commerce, Hayfork Chamber of Commerce, Humboldt Trinity Recreation Alliance, and Trinity County Information Services to promote and advertise Trinity County as a tourist destination, $70,000 from the general fund. CEO Coons.
Happy to answer any questions regarding this item.
So I had meant to pull this, and I apologize that Jill had to come and save me today. So the issue here that this has gone on for a long period before these entities are going to get their money, and with this, we're giving the money over this fiscal year and next fiscal year. I think the problems these groups have is that the money is needed in these for the tourist season of 2021, and any delay in those monies being received will just be lost opportunities. In fact, right now, it's almost too late to get any serious print advertising done. But I would like to request that these monies be given within the, in totality, as soon as possible, instead of delaying this out over a period of time. And I guess I formed that in a way of a question. So
Yeah.
at the end, I said, I did the little voice up.
Yes, we'll accept that as a form of question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've already spoken with Susie, and we are going to do one issuance of a check rather than the two to expedite the funds this year. We have had, like everybody else, some delays, but that's our problem now, which has become their problem. So we're going to work on getting the funds distributed in one check.
And could I ask, do you think there's a possibility that those checks could be written within 14 days?
No. There's a lot of things that they have to step, if you want to step up, Susie, there's a lot of things that are required by the organizations first prior to issuing the funding.
So based on our current policies, we can't start the process to issue checks until we have a fully executed contract. And then from there, the auditor's office is already on a 2-week turnaround. So depending on when I get a fully executed contract, prepare a claim for each entity, and then get those submitted to the auditor's office,
Here are some results from a search.
I apologize for that. And then get that turned around. Normally in our contracts, the auditor's office requests that we have a 60-day turnaround for payment. And so we're already shortening that down to 45.
So maybe there's portions of this I don't understand, but it seems to me, with my amount of understanding that I have, that the county's dropped the ball a little bit on what these entities need. Is that a fair statement?
You want?
I'm going to defer
We also have to look at the source of funding, and I don't want to seem cruel. However, grant fundings are designed for in addition to your normal operations. Usually you don't give grant fundings on a yearly basis that they become entitlements where they depend on them for things like rent, phone, things that really don't participate to advertise in Trinity County. They should have those costs fixed already, and they should have a budget that enables them to run regardless they get this. This should be in addition to their normal funding. So sometimes it's kind of tricky because what we're getting is agencies and organizations are saying, well, we need this to keep our doors open. That's not the intent of grant funding. Grant funding is intended to funding in addition to your normal services. So as far as dropping the ball, yes, we're later than we normally are, and that's why we're going to do the one payment. But there are, Susie, if you'll explain, some of the processes that they have to submit to us before we're allowed to distribute funds.
Was there disclosure on that before, through the course of time, this result just came to be?
I'm not sure the question.
Go ahead. I think the disclosure on that would be that the last contract we had that promised any funding to these entities expired on June 30th of 2020. We are not obligated to enter into a new contract for distribution of our general fund dollars to anybody other than the mandated services that we are required to provide. We are later than normal in getting a contract executed, but there was no obligation until the contract, there is no obligation until this contract is approved by you and executed to provide funding. Is that?
It makes sense. It does make sense. It just seems like the appearance is that there would have been an expectation that things would have continued to roll forward the way they had in the past, and without having had that conversation, which I'm assuming didn't happen, I can see where the confusion becomes very frustrating. I don't know what else you do about it. If we're going to roll forward this way, you're saying that there literally is no way to get it any faster than 45 days.
I will do my best, I just can't promise anything. I mean, because it's not just me that's involved in the process. It's working with every entity to get them to sign the contract, to get them to get us their proof of insurances, to get all of that stuff on file with me, then I submit claims and get those checks cut and issued. And that's not a process that I am 100% in control of. So I can only do as much as I can do, and then I rely on others to do their part as well. And I will request that those processes move as expeditiously as possible, but I can't make any promises.
Certainly, I understand. Okay.
Any additional questions? From the board?
And thank you.
You're welcome.
No questions? All right. Do you have any public comment on this item?
I don't have any raised hands,
All right.
and no one has messaged me yet.
I would entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move forward with the one-time payment.
All right. Emma, we have a first.
And I do have some discussion.
Yep, well, let's get through this part, we'll get to that discussion. We have a, oh, yes, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I just hope that in the future that I know we're working on a plan to move forward in the future so we don't have this long delay in the process. So I would hope by next year we have some sort of plan put together and contracts or whatever we're going to do, which I'm looking for you guys to come up with great plans instead of this long delay out. So that's my comment.
Any other comments, discussion from the board? Hearing none. I'm going to pull the board, please.
Motion by Supervisor Groves, second by Supervisor Cox. Supervisor Cox, how do you vote? Aye. Supervisor Groves.
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. And that brings us to reports and announcements. Item 4.1, report from department heads. Are there any department heads on Zoom wishing to report out? Mr. Tippett, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to report out real quick that we had a chance to ask for an earmark as part of the transportation bill that is currently being discussed in Congress. I didn't really have any time to bring it to the board for any action because it was kind of one of those things that here you fill this out and send it in within the next 3 days. So we did request a $3 million earmark for Wildwood Road. Don't know what the chances are of getting it. It sounded like we're probably on the side of not a very good chance, but a good chance. But we were in the position to fill out the paperwork and get it in, and we got our fingers crossed that we would get a $3 million earmark when the transportation bill does come out, if they do continue on with the earmarks themselves. And that would actually help fund half of phase 1 and allow us to advance the construction by about 4 years, so that we were looking at constructing in 26, 27. So that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Director Tippett. Any other department heads wishing to report? Anyone on Zoom?
I'm not seeing any movement.
Joe, you trying to report out?
No, I'm next up though.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
And Rick was the only one who notified me, so I believe that's it.
Okay. Then we'll go to 2, report from County Administrative Officer, Dr. Kunis.
Yeah, I just want to maybe make some clarifications because I've had some questions regarding the presentation I made to the board, and then it was back in December regarding the cannabis program. And that wasn't a directive by the board to make changes. It was information from administrative office, essentially some of my thoughts and deficiencies in the program in a direction it should be moving. Part of the transition plan today will encompass some of those thoughts that I had. And also from that, we've also been working forward on things that we've just done administratively, like the board just passed the allocation for departments, which we increased, I think, 4 or 5 allocations to the cannabis department. We are seriously considering using a consultant for the initial portion of our licensing, so that was something that came out of that. Through the general plan, discussions for opt-outs or areas that are appropriate for cannabis cultivation will be discussed in that, so that's coming out of that. And also the remodeling and construction on the bank, which we've started that. We've got here's some pictures of it. So we've been gutting it and getting it ready for working. So far what you're looking at there is the back side of the bank where the old teller window is. Used to be offices back there and a wall. We tore all that out. What you're seeing is one of the workers removing the long countertop. I think that's about 50 feet long. We're going to move that a little farther out into the lobby area. This is looking back at the front door towards Main Street. So you can see that the countertop is getting ready to be moved out, and where the ladder is behind that, there were some offices back there, and to the right you can see the safe door. So all that's being gutted out. So they've got a lot done so far, and I anticipate we'll be putting up some walls by the end of the week, because what we're looking at is the back side of the bank. We will be building a wall that spans completely across. We'll have a conference room and at least 5 offices in the back there. Plus with the countertop being moved out, we're going to have cubicles. So it's going to accommodate more staff than we presently have available to the department. So those things are moving forward. So that plan was recommendations and my overview of what I felt the deficiencies were, so I just want the board to know that we are moving forward on that. It's not something we just talked about. We're actually moving forward, and as I discussed earlier too, there was a suggestion of some type of oversight committee. We're still looking at who would be the best participants, but sadly right now the best participants are all in litigation with the county, so it makes it kind of difficult to have those individuals involved in policies when we're in litigation with them. So I'll have to work with our legal counsel to see if that is a conflict or not. So anyhow, that's what I have to report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? All right, seeing none, we will go to reports from Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Frazier, you mind starting off?
I don't have a whole lot to report. I don't know, be the perfect time. One thing I do have to report, I had some issue with Noah's agenda. I tried to put an item on the agenda. Emma informed me that it didn't work how I tried, so I will need to speak with you in the future about that. It's, for anybody who's interested, I've been fighting with this item since 2015. Long before I was a supervisor, the rural owner-builder housing type deal, most people call it K-housing, whatever, it started out when I was planning commissioner, and so I would, that's something I would, well, I guess, ask that the board agenda is for a future meeting sooner rather than later. I'm getting a lot of requests right now to discuss and provide direction moving forward with that program, because frankly, a lot of people in my district right now can't afford to rebuild with the restrictions that are imposed by state code. So.
All right, well, we'll make sure that happens.
Is that a direction from the board to bring that out back?
I don't think it's been seen by the board.
It has not been seen by the board. It was
just the planning commission.
Yeah, the board would need to bring it back and direct staff to start working on that, which they would come up through the planning commission, but we need direction from the board that that becomes an item that they're interested in having move forward.
Can we comment on that now?
No, you'll comment on it when the item is back. So the question is, so that the chair can make the decision to bring the item back. If the chair chooses not to, then 3 board members would have to give direction to staff in order to bring it back.
I would like to bring it back.
Okay. And then she'll come back. And that opportunity, Supervisor Hogan, you can comment.
I would make a recommendation along with that would be priorities for the planning department. If we're going to discuss that, we need to discuss all priorities for the planning department.
All right.
Is that, again, we have direction from 1 board member, chair, is that your pleasure to have a full discussion of priorities in the planning department?
I would personally say I don't think that's a realistic request at this time, but I would think that we could discuss that at the time that this item comes back, or that we are looking at this item. I think it would be appropriate variable to discuss then. Is that all right with you, Supervisor Groves?
Well, I don't quite understand the difference there. That I'm not saying that the board, if you're going to insert anything in our planning requirements or our planning priorities that we have today, then we're going to have to make a decision on what moves around within planning and all that. So, or we can give directions to hire outside staff or whatever. But I think that needs to be part of that discussion if that just happens organically at the time. But I think it's important for our planning staff to have clear, concise, we work on A, then we do B, then we do C. Direction from us, and not what we've done in the past, so just this shotgun approach. We want everything done all the time.
That's what the planning commission is for. Just throw stuff out if you get it back.
Yeah. So either way, I just think it needs to be part of that discussion.
All right.
Whatever you think is best, Chair.
All right, I think we'll just leave it as the discussion, not as an item. So. Is that clear?
So we're just bringing an item on K-House.
Correct.
And then as part of the discussion, Supervisor Groves will bring up his concerns regarding.
I would just say, part of that discussion would include the realistic nature of planning department's capacity. Just as a discussion, not as a report. Supervisor Hogan.
So I have a few things. Me and Jill attended the PSA2 meeting a week or so ago with Mountain Chapel. And it seems like things are coming together there pretty well, although it is a very tedious, time-consuming application process, but I think they'll do a good job. I also went to the Child Abuse Council meeting and learned a lot there, talked to quite a few people, and it was very informative. And I also met with Keith about some input to the language of the refinement letter the TMC is going to submit, and I think me and Keith came up with some mutually good ideas at that lengthy talk we had. I think it will be fruitful for the TRB and TMC. That is all.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Cox.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, we've got a District 2 Town Hall meeting coming up on Monday, April 12th, 7 to 8 via Zoom, and that ID link is on the website. It's a static link now, so if you have it, you have it, which is really helpful. 2 panelists at that meeting. Pat Frost is going to talk about the Rotary Club's efforts to put bike racks and trash cans on Main Street. And then also Tom March, he's the Caltrans District 2 landscape specialist. And so looking at Weaverville streets tree assessment, maintenance and construction efforts, hazard versus risk, and mitigation alternatives. We'll also get a chance to have just other topics. You can hop on and present topics that would be relative to his input at that meeting. I guess as far as asking the chair for consideration, I felt, I guess at each meeting I thought it would get easier, but this meeting obviously is really weighty. I had a tough time being adequately prepared for today. Got it done, but didn't get a lot of sleep. Was wondering if there could be some discussion that we could maybe adjust the protocols of when our board packets come out and when our meetings happen. Maybe just a little bit. It just feels like one business day to ask all questions of staff and to read the material and be prepared. It's really challenging for me. So just a request, maybe we could consider some alternatives.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with you about that.
Okay.
All right.
And then I guess the other thing is I am concerned with what Keith said as a private citizen with what he's going through if there are other businesses. Yes.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, actually one thing, sorry, thank you. PATH, they've got a virtual health and wellness fair coming up April 19th through the 23rd. I forwarded their information out to the constituent email list that I have, but they've been working really hard to put something together there. It's free, it's all virtual, a number of health-related and wellness topics that are just really relevant to what folks have been going through with COVID, applicable to lots of age groups and interests, and so encourage folks to check that out.
All right. Thank you. Supervisor Groves?
I don't have a lot to add to thank Liam for that discussion we had on river restoration, and we continue to seem to work together pretty well and discuss things. I do want to give a public watch out is I think it's April 15th or 16th, the river flows start going up. They'll peak around April 30th at 3,300 cubic feet a second going down the river. So, and will stay high until June, so everybody please be careful out there. And during dry years, you can go, it's not long run out things, so in one day you can be at 2,000, the next day you can be at 3,000, so please be careful on the river. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your report out. I had a collaborative meeting a couple of weeks ago. Some things that were relevant. Someone had made public comment, I believe, at the last normal board meeting asking about some of the cannabis cleanup grant money and where it comes from. And so that is the Integral Ecology Research Center. I believe they're out on the coast. But they are the ones that use the funds from the California Fish and Wildlife Grant to implement these illegal grow site cleanups on public lands. So that's the IERC. The Burke Ranch Forest Project, trying to kind of still figure out where that's at and what the plan is for that moving forward. It is slightly ambiguous, but it's on the radar of the collaborative and the relative agencies. It was discussed about the spotted owl, that 179,000 acres of Forest Service land has been reclassified as matrix lands, and if anyone is interested in the details of the spotted owl reclassification, they can feel free to reach out to me or to the collaborative for further, more detailed explanation on it. But there was a spotted owl reclassification. And something kind of fun and interesting, and I don't think problematic, is that Six Rivers was selected this year to find and deliver the Christmas tree for the state capitol. This hasn't happened, I don't think, before. And so what this entails is one main tree, and then between 70 to 130 more trees that go to all of the congressional offices. And so the Ranger District will be bringing those trees and hauling them down. So I thought that was kind of neat and fun. And I'm not sure how Six Rivers goes about the selection of the trees, but there may be the ability for people to suggest trees, or if they see a sweet tree, take a picture of it and send a little link into the Six Rivers office. That is about all for the collaborative. Additionally, the Behavior Health Services Board needs some additional members from District 4, so if there are any District 4 residents listening to this and interested in serving on that board, we would love to have you. Lastly, I had a neat talk with, the economic development representative for this area of the state. I've lost my slide now. And it was nice to discuss broad opportunities. She's located, her name's Jill, I don't know her last name, but she's located in Siskiyou County, so she was very familiar with some of the rural challenges for, there it is, for the area. And we talked about wood biomass and tourism and grant fundings that are out there for the Climate Catalyst Fund. She recommended that we look at some of Tuolumne County's program for biomass, as it's been deemed kind of unique and out-of-the-box thinking. So that's something that we've kind of been suggested to look into. And other than that, I have nothing else to report on. So it's almost 1 o'clock. I would like to continue going into county matters, but maybe take a 10-minute break. Is that okay with supervisors, or does anyone feel otherwise?
Mr. Chair, may I suggest that we do 5.1 and then take a lunch break?
Oh, I'm fine with that, if other supervisors are fine. All right. We'll go into county matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters and are listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board, staff, or public may request that an item be heard out of order. Are there any requests from the board or staff? And again, for listeners, the addendum items will be placed after 5.10 at the end of the meeting. And I imagine that's likely to be much later. So agriculture, item 5.1, introduce and waive the reading of an ordinance implementing a ban of industrial hemp within the unincorporated areas of Trinity County. No fiscal impact. As I hold a valid cannabis cultivation license, I'll be recusing myself from this item. And Vice Chair Frazier will be taking over.
Is this, sorry, is this time to pull 5.2? No, we're not.
You missed it.
We don't hold these items. Okay, well, I can discuss about the, what you're going to.
It's a discussion item. All right, well, I think we can wait until Jeremy gets out the door, and then we will move on with item 5.1. All right, Director Moreo to
Commissioner.
Oh, Commissioner, sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Sealer, actually.
Okay.
Who's counting? Jeannie.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, sorry. So this is introduce and waive the reading of the ordinance implementing ban of industrial hemp within the unincorporated areas of Trinity County. We had our kickoff rollout to get information, then we had a second meeting after we took input. We haven't received any input other than people for it. So at this point, if it's to the board of additional questions or information.
Does anyone have any questions for Commissioner Moreo? Okay, Joe.
Like the cookie with an M.
Joe.
There you go, Joe. That works. Hey, you ugly.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Do you have any on Zoom?
I don't see any hands raised. And I have not had any chats about this. I'm speaking slowly, so if anyone wants to give public comment, they can jump in. Otherwise, we will move forward.
Seeing none? All right.
Say no.
No public comment. We can bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the ordinance, implement a ban of industrial hemp in the unincorporated areas of Trinity County.
I have a motion. Anyone care to second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Emma?
Before I pull the board, so I don't mess this up, is there any more discussion on this side? I don't want to jump the gun.
Okay.
All right. Motion by Supervisor Gogan, second by Supervisor Groves. Supervisor Groves, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Gogan,
Aye.
Supervisor Cox, Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
We're good?
We're good.
We're done. That's your whole day shot for that.
Well, I have a request. Please go out and wash your cars, because I need rain. I gotta find a way.
Okay.
Keith reminded me it's getting too dry. Thank you very much. You guys have an excellent day.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, now, I guess we should invite our chairman back in here.
Cool.
So we can have a time back.
You didn't get to use them.
I didn't hear you.
All right, next is clerk of the board, item 5.2. Discuss and or appoint David Alves as the board's alternate on the PSA 2 executive board to serve a term ending December 31st, 2021. No fiscal impact. James is here.
Yeah, I thought long and hard. I'm not going to pull it. We'll just discuss this. As it is stands now, I think me and Jill are the alternate and second to the PSA 2 board for the supervisors. Is that correct, Jill?
The appointee,
Okay. So I'm not.
That's from the board.
A member of the public is going to be in position 3 there. Is that the way I'm reading that?
Well, it's not like a 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
It's a member of the public.
Almost
No.
every committee has a member of the public.
Supervisor, as the executive, on the PSA 2 executive board, you have 2 primary board members and then an alternate member. A few years ago, the board chose to appoint Sandy Bechtold as that alternate member who was the public. It doesn't necessarily have to be a public member. It could be a 3rd supervisor. It's just, you have 2 primary members that represent Trinity County on the executive board and 1 alternate. So this is just appointing David Alves as the alternate to you guys. You could have chose to appoint one of yourselves as the alternate. But you have 2 primaries, and Liam and Supervisors Gogan and Cox fill those 2 primary positions.
Thank you very much. I wasn't sure about how that works, so now that I know, that's all I need to know.
All right. And,
I guess my technical question is this person a voting member?
They're an alternate, so in the absence of one of the other 2 executive board members, they would vote, but if they just attend.
Okay, so they're a true alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any additional technical questions?
Yeah, I do. Actually, if David currently represents the Golden Age Center, which he is working on that now, and is this just, I guess this would fix it, is this a 1-year term? It does. It says ending December 31, 21. That solves my question. I'm good.
Is there, can we take public comment on this?
Not yet.
So is there any further discussion? So we need to take a motion in a second.
We still need public.
Yeah, that's what I just asked.
No, we were getting out.
Well, I said we haven't done it.
Oh, okay, I apologize. All right, is there any public comment on this item?
I have no raised hands.
Okay.
And once again, speaking slowly to allow time for someone to interrupt me. No one has messaged me on the chat. I think we are good to move forward.
Okay. Then with that, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to accept 5.2 as presented.
I'll second.
All right, Emma, we have a motion from Supervisor Groves and a second from Supervisor Cox. Please poll the board.
Supervisor Cox, how do you vote? Aye. Supervisor Groves.
Aye.
Supervisor Grogan.
Aye.
Supervisor Frazier.
Aye.
Supervisor Brown.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, David Alves. And thank you for serving that position. Item 5.3, discuss and/or consider appointing a supervisor to represent the board on the following committees: Trinity County Fire Safe Council, Weaverville Community Forest Steering Committee, and Trinity County Watershed District. Dr. Coons, this is your item.
We've received letters of interest from the committees to ask the board to appoint a board member to one of these committees, so we're bringing it forward at the request of these the committees listed here.
All right. Do you have any technical questions, board members?
I would have a question. Are we talking 3 separate appointments, or are we for each committee, or is this going to be one board member that's tasked with all 3 of these committees?
Well, that would be up back to the chair, the one who makes the appointment, so it'll be up to the chair if he wants to appoint one to all 3, or if we have volunteers for each committee, so the chair has the authority to make the appointments.
Let it be known. Is there anyone interested in these appointments?
Yes, because if I need more committees. But I have already been doing the Fire Safe Council and the Weaverville Community Forest Steering Committee, and have been enjoying them very much. Appreciate the learning, appreciate what these folks do, and I feel the same way about the Watershed District. They're amazing. I haven't been doing that one, and because my list is already pretty inclusive. I would appreciate if someone else would take the Watershed District, but I'd be willing and enjoy. Appreciate being appointed to the other 2.
I would step up and do the Watershed, but I don't know if we should ask Jill to, I understand she wants to be involved in everything, but I think that's we're asking too much.
And I would also take the Watershed if he doesn't want to, or as an alternate if need be.
Well, the Weaverville Community Forest, whose district is that in, mostly?
Well, it's you, me, and Jill. It's probably mainly you.
Okay.
There might be Liam, too.
Probably have a little bit, I'm not exactly.
Jill, what would be your priority one, if you had to just pick one? I'm sorry, you can think about it for a minute. Liam, do you have any interest in any of these?
Yeah, I would like to go with the Trinity County Watershed Council.
That would be fine by me if anyone wants to take that one.
All right, I think that's great, considering your profession.
I would probably, I don't care if you do.
No, I'm just, go ahead, whatever you think. I've been on fire boards, and my father was a forester, so
Okay.
I think I know stuff about all sorts of things that I don't know.
Would you like both?
Not really.
I'll do the Fire Safe Council then, if you want to do the community forest, or...
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, unless there's any objections, it sounds like we found consensus here. that Supervisor Gogan will be the representative for the Trinity County Watershed District, that Supervisor Cox will be the representative for Trinity County Fire Safe Council. Is that right? Is that right? All right. And Supervisor Groves will be the representative for the Weaverville Community Force Steering Committee.
I think I would move, well, we haven't done public yet. So.
Thank you all for volunteering for these positions. And with that, we will take public comment on this item.
I have no hands raised. And no one, oh, there is one person who has messaged me, so I'm on top of it.
All right. Yes, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Azalee Welsh, and I'm the Forest Health Program Manager for the Trinity County RCD. My organization is involved in all three of these councils, and I just wanted to say if anybody has any questions about any of these councils or committees, that I'm here to answer questions. And the RCD really appreciates the opportunity to have board representation on these councils. And one slight correction for the agenda, at least the version that I have. The watershed group is called the Trinity River Watershed Council, not the Watershed District.
Okay. That clarifies the question I was going to ask, where the district borders for that stuff.
What's the renaming of it? Trinity River?
Watershed Council?
Yeah, Trinity River Watershed Council.
Any additional public comments on this item?
I see no one else with a raised hand.
Okay.
And no other checks.
All right. I would entertain a motion for this item and the appointees we've discussed.
I don't think we need to do the appointees because you wield your mighty power. And Margaret's out, so I would move to make these three councils have an appointed position by a supervisor representative.
I will second that motion.
All right. We have a first and a second. Emma, please pull the board.
Motion by Supervisor Groves, second by Supervisor Frazier. Supervisor Frazier, how do you vote?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Cox? Aye. Supervisor Gogan?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Our next item is County Administrative Office. Item 5.4. Receive a mid-year budget review for fiscal year 2021 and authorize the County Administrative Officer and Auditor Controller to sign the budget adjustments necessary to recognize the corrections to the Mercurial determined contributions required for OPEB for fiscal year 1920 and 2021, refunds to all departments from OPEB in a total amount of $888,630, and increased appropriations across all departments for OPEB in the total amount of $163,492. Who is...
Chair, I would request that we take our lunch break because this could be long. Your next two items could be long.
All right, we have a request for lunch break. Any objections to that? Hearing none, we will adjourn for lunch, break for lunch, I should say, and let's plan on returning at 2:30. Is that okay? All right, 2:30 we will resume the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
Good job, Chair.
Because, oh, it's because When it comes to the same, no, you can't have the money.
When you have to write that?
I'm tired.
You don't have to do that to be
Excuse me, okay, there's actually a lot of movement on this side, so.
I'm sure there is.
I will find, do you want me up there?
Well, I know I felt kind of like a jerk the other night. I finally got a guy from planning commission. His wife, and they went until 11:04. Yeah, I just looked at it. I looked you up on YouTube, and I just looked over there and was like, they're still talking.
I thought they only had, I know.
There's one.
Oh, that's what I thought. I was like, did I?
It was a show.
Oh.
Junction City. It's a big deal. Yeah, and it was like, oh, nice.
Oh, no.
I told them, well, at least you should never have to worry about having a worse meeting for time-wise.
Oh, no. Thanks, you too.
Good to talk to you and Trevor. How are you?
Good.
How's life?
Well, audience,
she's getting better.
Man.
Okay.
It was a little
But no
nerve-wracking there.
downturns.
Last minute, I'm like, shit,
Well, no.
it's gonna work.
No downturn. Okay. Getting better.
What's happening?
So,
Well, you know.
no, she's, I mean, we're working through it.
Whole lot of nonsense.
A whole lot of.
All right.
Always.
See you for lunch.
Okay,
thank you.
I'll see you in an hour or so.
All right. And you're gonna have to share space with me.
Okay, I'm actually pretty compact today. Surprisingly so. That was the letter that Paul was covering about. Good.
I don't know. I think I'll shut this down.
Might as
I'll
well.
sit there for